Jordan Peterson has spent a lifetime teaching millions how to face chaos and shoulder unimaginable pain. But there was a pain that even the master psychologist himself couldn't name, couldn't face, and that very nearly broke him completely. His enemy wasn't an online controversy or a political force, but something lurking inside the seemingly safe prescription pills that millions of people rely on every single day. This is the harrowing tragedy the Peterson family has endured over the past 12 months, told for the very first time by his own daughter. That collapse becomes even more unbelievable when we look back at the man the world once knew. Because before being crushed by sheer physical agony, Jordan Peterson was the ultimate bedrock for millions. The icon. Jordan Peterson was never just an ivory tower philosopher. Before he became one of the most controversial intellectuals of the decade, he was a clinical psychologist. For decades, he sat across from people in pain. Parents who had lost children, couples leaving broken marriages, patients facing terminal diagnoses. He did not learn about suffering only from books. He faced it directly, hour after hour, year after year. When 12 Rules for Life was released in 2018, it sold 5 million copies in its first year and later passed 10 million worldwide. His follow-up book, Beyond Order, came out in 2021 and followed a similar path. His lectures gained hundreds of millions of views, and his speaking tours filled arenas across the world. What made Peterson's message powerful was that he did not sell false hope. He never promised that life would become easy if people simply tried harder. Instead, he said life is brutal, chaos can strike at any moment, and the only real answer is to stand up, take responsibility, and carry the burden. That message connected deeply, especially with young men who felt ignored or dismissed. Peterson told them their suffering mattered, and that if they faced it honestly, it could become the foundation of a meaningful life. As his influence grew, so did the backlash. Universities created courses criticizing him. Online communities formed to defend him. Few academics in recent history have inspired such intense devotion and opposition. But behind all of it, one question remained. Why does suffering still find those who understand it best? For Peterson, the answer did not come as a philosophical idea. It came as a brutal physical reality, so severe that his loved ones spent sleepless nights wondering if he would survive the week. The harrowing account. Michaela Fuller is Jordan Peterson's eldest daughter. She is not someone who easily breaks down on camera. For years, she has hosted her own podcast, interviewed hundreds of guests, and spoken openly about personal struggles most people would keep private. Yet for nearly a year, she could not record a single update about her father. Every time she pressed record, she cried. She tried again the next day, and the same thing happened. According to her, she cried every day for nearly 360 days. When she finally sat in front of the camera, she was 25 weeks pregnant. Her first words were chilling. She said her father's condition was the worst thing she had ever seen anyone endure. That statement carries enormous weight, because Michaela knows suffering well. She spent 2.5 years nearly crippled by neurological side effects after withdrawing from an antidepressant. She watched her mother, Tammy, battle a rare kidney cancer after doctors gave her only months to live. She has lived with autoimmune disease, gone through joint replacement surgeries, and recently had to hospitalize her own newborn. So when she said this was the worst suffering she had ever witnessed, it was not exaggeration. It was the judgment of someone who had already seen pain up close. The condition she named was akathisia. Most people have never heard of it. It rarely makes headlines and almost never trends online. But for those who have experienced it, it is one of the most devastating neurological torments a human being can face. To understand why Peterson fell into this state in 2025, after 5.5 years without taking psychiatric medication, the story has to go back much further. It did not begin last year. It began long ago, inside a family raised on the wide plains of northern Alberta. Roots of a Mind. Jordan Burnt Peterson was born on June 12, 1962, in Edmonton, Alberta. He spent the bulk of his childhood in Fairview, a small town on the northern Albertan plains. It's the kind of place where winters drag on so long they feel endless, and the silence between humanity and the rest of the world holds a depth that is both geographic and philosophical. Young Jordan was a quiet kid who read everything he could get his hands on and asked questions the adults around him had no idea how to answer. Not because he was trying to be a smart aleck. He genuinely wanted to know. Why do human beings commit atrocities against one another? Why are some families happy while others are torn apart? Why is meaning so fragile, yet so absolutely essential? Those questions never left him as he grew up. He started out studying political science at the University of Alberta before pivoting to psychology. He earned his PhD from McGill in Montreal, one of the most rigorous academic environments in Canada. He taught at Harvard for years before heading back up north to take a tenured professorship at the University of Toronto. For the vast majority of his career, he was a highly respected academic, but practically unknown outside his field. His life's work revolved around the psychology of belief, mythology, religious symbolism, and, most notably, the roots of totalitarianism. He devoured the works of Carl Jung, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn. The question that had haunted him since childhood became the central thesis of his life's research. How can ordinary people participate in extraordinary evil? Everything changed in 2016, when the Canadian government introduced a bill regarding compelled speech and gender pronouns. He recorded a series of lectures pushing back against what he saw as ideological overreach. He uploaded the videos online without overthinking it, and the blowback and support was instantaneous. Millions of people felt that someone was finally saying what they had secretly believed. Millions of others viewed him as the ultimate symbol of everything that needed to be torn down. Peterson didn't back down. 2 years later, 12 Rules for Life dropped, thrusting him straight into the epicenter of the decade's biggest culture war. By 2021, he followed it up with Beyond Order. His podcast numbers exploded, pulling in millions of subscribers. But behind the spotlight and the sold-out arenas, a darkness had been lying dormant in his family long before the world ever knew his name. Generational darkness and the first catastrophe. Depression runs deeply through the Peterson family. His father had it. His grandfather had it. Peterson had it too. This was not ordinary sadness, but a heavy, suffocating darkness that could trap a person for decades. No amount of willpower, determination, or optimism could simply push it away. In the 1990s, when his depression became so severe that it affected his teaching and work, Peterson went to doctors. They prescribed antidepressants and explained them as a simple correction for a chemical imbalance. They were presented as safe, almost like a vitamin for the nervous system. Peterson trusted them. The doctors were trained experts, and the medication seemed to help. The darkness lifted just enough for him to work, write, teach, and raise a family. Much of his brilliant career was built on that fragile foundation. Then his wife, Tammy, was diagnosed with a rare form of kidney cancer. Doctors first told her she might have only months to live. The fear of losing her devastated Peterson. He could not sleep. He lost weight. He could not focus. Doctors then prescribed clonazepam, a benzodiazepine. He did not take it for recreation or because he wanted to escape reality. He took it because medical professionals told him it was the right treatment for a man watching his wife possibly die. That decision began the worst chapter of his life. What Peterson, his family, and many doctors did not fully understand was that benzodiazepines are not like ordinary medications. They can create powerful physical dependency. This is not typical addiction with cravings or getting high. Instead, the brain rewires itself around the drug. When the drug is reduced too quickly, or when it begins causing more harm than good, the nervous system can react with almost unmatched intensity. By late 2019, it became clear that clonazepam was damaging Peterson more than helping him. He had to stop, but a normal withdrawal process was impossible because his nervous system had become too dependent. He traveled to Russia, where doctors placed him under specialized care. The withdrawal process was so extreme that it required a medically induced coma to get through the first stage, because his body could not endure it while conscious. He returned in January 2020 and never took another psychiatric pill. The next 5.5 years became a slow, painful, uneven recovery. Tammy survived cancer. Michaela found faith. The family seemed to finally reach a place of peace. But the deepest wound had not fully healed. It was only lying dormant. When the past returns. The year 2025 hit the Peterson family like a perfect storm. That year, both of Jordan Peterson's parents passed away. For a 63-year-old man, that grief alone would have been devastating. But because his nervous system had already been damaged years earlier, the emotional pain became more than grief. It became a physical trigger. At the same time, the family sold a home filled with decades of memories and moved to another country. During the move and medical treatments, Peterson stayed in a hotel where he was exposed to mold. That detail was only discovered later, but once it was found, the pieces finally began to fit. Michaela believes mold may have triggered a condition called chronic inflammatory response syndrome, or CIRS. In people with certain genetic vulnerabilities, mold biotoxins can cause an extreme inflammatory reaction. The mitochondria, the energy centers of the cells, may shut down to protect themselves. This can create a chain reaction of neurological, cognitive, and physical symptoms that look like many other illnesses, making it extremely hard to diagnose. She also believes this same genetic weakness may explain the depression that has appeared across generations in the Peterson family. Not a lack of character, not a failure of willpower, but a biological vulnerability passed from one generation to the next. The first signs appeared in August 2024. They were mild and vague, easy to dismiss as stress, grief, exhaustion, and the effects of moving across the world. The family missed it. The doctors missed it. Peterson was sent from one specialist to another, including some of the best hospitals and clinics they knew. For 6 months, he was misdiagnosed again and again. Each wrong diagnosis led to the wrong treatment. And while the medical system struggled to name what was happening, Peterson's condition kept getting worse. Then he caught pneumonia. For a man with an already damaged nervous system, that was dangerous enough. But it turned into sepsis, a life-threatening condition that can lead to organ failure within hours. He was rushed to the hospital, and for the first time, the family faced the real possibility that he might not survive. He survived the pneumonia. He survived the sepsis. But the medications used during treatment, prescribed according to standard medical practice by doctors who did not fully understand his neurological history, made his underlying condition far worse. That was when the family finally realized what they had missed for months. The akathisia was back. Not because Peterson had taken a new psychiatric drug, but because a nervous system damaged 5 years earlier had been violently reactivated by extreme physical stress. The hell of akathisia. In medical textbooks, akathisia is often described simply as restlessness. Michaela says that word is dangerously inadequate. Restlessness is what someone feels before a job interview. Akathisia, she says, is something far more terrifying. To explain it, she described her own experience, which she insists was much milder than what her father is now enduring. It felt like a violent sense of impending doom, stronger than anything a person should naturally be able to feel. It was like falling endlessly without ever reaching the ground. Her body could not stay still. She had to hug her knees and rock back and forth just to find the smallest bit of relief. But it was not only in her legs. It consumed her entire body and overloaded every sense. Her vision broke into pixels. She could not see colors properly. Music hurt her ears. Light burned her eyes. Even the faintest smell became unbearable. She could not watch TV. She could not lie in bed normally. All she could do was stay in a dark room and try not to panic. And according to Michaela, that was the mild version. Her father's condition is far worse, and he is living with it every hour of every day. The cruel irony is that this happened to Jordan Peterson, a man who built his life around finding the right words for human suffering. He taught millions that naming darkness is the first step toward facing it, and that stories help people survive pain. But akathisia does not care what it is called. It does not respond to mindset, philosophy, mythology, or any of the intellectual tools Peterson spent decades developing. It exists beneath language. It is pure biology, damage at the cellular level. A man who taught the world that words could help fight pain is now trapped in a condition that words can barely describe. Chapter 7. The Burden, the Faith, and the Wake-Up Call. Michaela says there is finally a light at the end of the tunnel. The family has the right diagnosis, the right specialists, and a clearer understanding of what they are facing. But Jordan Peterson has not reached that light yet. According to Michaela, the past year has been pure hell. She cried almost every day. Her younger brother became so stressed he barely spoke. Her mother, Tammy, who had already survived cancer, is now exhausted in a different way. After everything this family has endured, they are being forced to survive one more crisis. During this time, faith became a major source of strength. Tammy converted to Catholicism in 2023. Michaela found Christianity 2 years earlier. Peterson has long spoken about the deep wisdom of the Christian tradition, even if he has never officially called himself a believer in the institutional sense. But those closest to him say faith is now something he leans on. Michaela said that without love, faith, and the communication skills built through years of hardship, this crisis would have crushed them. It almost did, but it did not. There is a bitter irony in Peterson's suffering. For years, he argued that people must take responsibility for their lives. Critics accused him of not fully recognizing how biology and circumstance can limit choice. Now, he is living through exactly that reality. His nervous system was severely damaged by drugs prescribed by doctors he trusted, while following what was considered the best medical advice at the time. No willpower could have prevented it. Peterson once said, "Life doesn't negotiate." Now, those words feel heavier than ever. But Michaela says this story is bigger than one family. That is why she finally spoke publicly. 1 in 6 Americans is on psychiatric medication, and many have been taking it for more than 5 years. Many were told these drugs were safe, that they corrected a chemical imbalance, and that long-term use carried little risk. According to Michaela and recent studies, that is not true. She says long-term use of psychiatric drugs, especially SSRIs and benzodiazepines, can damage mitochondria, cause neurological injury, remain in the body's system long after stopping, and be reactivated years later by extreme stress. That, she believes, is what happened to her father. Michaela is not against medicine, and she is not telling people to quit medication suddenly. She is asking for informed consent. Patients deserve to know the risks before they start. The problem is that drug-induced damage is often mistaken for a relapse. Patients are given more medication, which can cause more damage, which creates more symptoms. The cycle continues until someone finally asks the right questions. There is a kind of bravery that no audience ever sees. It's not the bravery of standing on a stage in front of thousands. It's not the bravery of holding your ground against a hostile crowd. It's the bravery of an ordinary morning, waking up in a body that has become a hostile environment and choosing to stick around for one more day. Peterson himself once said something during a previous dark period that now hits completely differently. He admitted that, for much of that time, he wished he were dead. He said he was grateful for the good things that had come his way, but that he hadn't been grateful enough before, just for mundane normalcy. If you can sit down and just breathe, there are a lot of people who don't have that. Right now, Peterson is no longer an icon. He isn't a cultural figurehead or a political flashpoint. He is just a 63-year-old man dealing with an extraordinarily severe neurological condition, being held up by the people who love him. Stripped of everything, he has become exactly what he always said, Everyone is, at their core, fragile, finite, in desperate need of meaning, in desperate need of each other, and yet still standing. If this story makes you think differently about the people around you who might be quietly suffering through something similar, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below to let us know where you're watching from. And if you want more stories told with raw honesty, minus the sensationalism, hit subscribe and join us again next week.